Thank you so much for that introduction and for that wonderful synergy that we seem to have between the organization I founded, Springboard, and Equalize. And I will do what I can to try to get my slides up so we can get right to it, which always is an issue for me. There. Okay, thank you all for being here and for this wonderful convergence of like-minded people for the same vision and impact that we're all trying to achieve. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of my experience and also some of the learnings that over 20 years of working with women entrepreneurs I've learned. I always say I got my PhD from Women Entrepreneur, and so I'm going to share a little bit of those insights of what I learned with you. So again, everything really for me are questions that need to be answered, and what better than who, what, when, why, and how. And so we'll start with the who. And just to take a step back so you know where I started on this journey, it was about 25 years ago when I was running this federal commission, the National Women's Business Council, that was empowered by Congress to look at bold initiatives that would help women entrepreneurs or women business owners in particular on their quest for access to contracts and access to capital. And so if you focus on the access to capital part, that was really the beginning of the process. And that was my learning experience. So take you back 25 years, we're running a series of workshops and finish across the country talking to women business owners and funders on access to capital programs and strategies. And we get to Silicon Valley. And this was 1997. And we pulled together a group of bankers and a group of women entrepreneurs. And in those days, most of it was e-commerce or .com, very, very early concept companies, and we put them together with the bankers, and it was probably the worst experience that I've ever had because there was no conversation that was happening. And what I learned from that experience was that you really need to know the type of funder that's right for your business. And then the second part of it, you need to know what those funders are interested in. So you're not just going to, if you have a biotech company, you're not going to a funder who only invests in consumer products. And so not all funders are alike, whether they're bankers, whether they're investors, whether they're private equity or investment bankers or individuals or family offices. There is a landscape for this. So who? We said, all right, bankers weren't right for early tech companies, and because bankers need several years of revenues in order to be able to fit into their formula. But there are others who are willing to take on a bigger risk. And so those are like your friends and family, personal money, of course, is always really nice, using your credit cards or whatever. Individual angels, and going into the more recent crowdfunding approach to things, showing people what your ideas are, people who either know you or are interested in what you're doing, angel groups and networks. These are probably accredited people with certain type of wealth. Sometimes they invest individually, sometimes within a group. And then you get to accelerators and incubators that take all of these take percentages of ownership in your companies. And then you get into the more established organizations that are venture capital and family offices, corporate venture. They are basically investing other people's money. And whereas the others usually invest their own money. So they answer to a larger group. So, so what is it that they offer as far as, instruments that help you make the investment? And over the past 20 years, you can see there is a change in not a simple investment for a certain amount of percentage, but different ways of managing those relationships with people who want to give you money. Convertible notes, again, it's a lot more like, acts like a debt instrument. So, until you've gotten a certain amount of traction with your business, they're willing to take that. Safes are another fairly recent addition to this. Again, prospecting on the fact that you'll transfer that into future equity. Then, of course, common stock and preferred stock. These are equity instruments that, again, take, you're selling part of your business to people willing to give you a certain amount of money. And then my preferred way of actually running a business is through non-dilutive funding. And that's, my favorite is actually revenues, selling something. Pitch competitions and crowdfunding offer you often a way not to give away your equity, which is as like platinum as far as people are concerned about your companies. Factoring, if you have products that you're getting into the market and have contracts, you can work with a factor on getting actual money up front instead of waiting for somebody will pay you, and clearly grants, contracts, partnerships, licensing. The list goes on, as creative as you can make it. These are non-dilutive sources for the most part, and the most desired. So when is the appropriate time for your company to actually look for these sorts of instruments, financial instruments? And that's the thing that boggles the mind on it, because it changes constantly. Back in 20 years ago, when we were first working with the initial cohort of companies, the venture capital would give you, $500,000 or $1 million, and angels were really giving you small amounts of money. That has changed over the years. I call it, inflation, entrepreneurship inflation. Now, venture capital funds usually want to put a significant amount more money to work, and therefore requiring a greater valuation or, prospect, and they're trying to de-risk where you are. So you look at the stage in which you're at. If you're in idea phase, if you've got something that you think is going to be a great market opportunity, you go to the people you know. And that's probably the best way for you to start. And as long as you can, keep that up. And then, if you're a little further along and you can see that you're at a point where you can get to building your minimum viable product and get it into the market, you're ready to take the next step, you go into individual angels and incubator programs and accelerator programs that, again, add some tremendous value to you and introduce you to people that can be employees or advisors or investors. And then you get to your seed funding and on. But again, know what your stage of business is, know where you are with the process, and seek out funders who are basically at that level. And some people say the desired effect is an IPO or listing on a public markets. It really does depend on your business. And so when you look at this and work with an investor, you have to always remember what they're looking for. And they may love what you're doing, but mostly what they mostly love is the fact that they're going to get a return, a significant return. We call it multiples of of the investment that they make in your business, and in a certain amount of time, so that they can actually deliver for either their own bank accounts or for the people that invest in their funds. So you always have to be thinking about that in a way that that makes a difference in how you look at things. And knowing what you're raising the capital for is really important to impart. And so that reality check, again, is what is it that you are raising the money for? How are you intending to execute on your plan? That's what they want to hear, is they can de-risk that potential investment in you by you telling them what your plan is. And the reality check is that they may invest in 10 to 20 companies, and they only expect 1 or 2 is going to have a return that is worth it for them. That's the reality check that you need to think about every time you go in. So what I've learned on all of this is, yes, know the landscape, know what's out there, know what they're looking for, understand that process. But the one thing that it took me years to really figure out, after watching almost 1,000 businesses go through our programs and learning this process, was the most important thing that you can keep in mind is to focus on making the business case. And that's what investors care the most about. And so every single entrepreneur that I've learned is they're focused on the product, which is really why you started the business, is to make an impact with your product, to get it into the market, to have people use it, or to change the way something works. Bottom line is that you have to be very clear about that, what your impact is, what your plan is, how does your product actually make a difference? How are you going to actually acquire customers? Not just, I plan to, I know the market that I'm looking for. It's how do you get them to use what you're doing? I had a conversation with an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, the other day, and she told me a very impactful percentage of compliance for their cardiac technology, remote technology that they're using. And I said, what do you attribute that to? And she hadn't really thought about that. She just was amazed at the high number of compliance. And I said, I really need to know what that secret sauce is in order to be able to understand that it's sustainable. That's really what I need to know. And I need to understand how this, if it's not going to scale, how is it going to have a significant impact in that target population that you're looking for? How do you get them to stay with you? And those are the kinds of things that I look for, not just understanding what the product does, not just understanding who the market is, but getting deeper into, how is this going to work? I want to know what your plan is as you go through, and what your expectations of execution. And so in that way, I developed something called a milestone slide. And actually, there are tons of these around, but it's really a business plan on a slide. And what I find is a lot of people spend a lot of time building long, many, many pages of business plans that essentially are not, are obsolete the minute you finish it. But honestly, on this one, this is for you in essence to see what, for instance, on the first column, it's what did you accomplish so far? If you came up with the idea, or you tested it with somebody, whatever it was until today, what was it that you did? What did you get somebody to buy it? Did you, what did you learn and what did you accomplish? And so this is essentially an accomplishment slide that helps you with how you begin to plot out your execution plan for your business. And so this is a description of what I have to be thinking about as I look through, this, all these little pieces to make sure I'm keeping on track with what it is I expect to accomplish as I'm seeing the value increase in my business. And so people who invest in you want to know that if they provide you some money, you're going to accomplish certain milestones that lead you to a point where you will see the value of your opportunity increase. Sometimes there's just one of those in a 4 to 5 year period, but sometimes you have 3 or 4 of them. Every single time, we call it a value inflection point, you hit that point. An investor, it's almost like when you hit that point, an angel is going to, you're going to hear an angel ding. And that's the way I look at it, is they're looking for the point at which you've accomplished certain things and they can see that the value of their investment has now increased. Of course, it's because of the value of your business has increased. But again, they're going to assume that they want to make sure that the money that they put into you is going towards that goal. And then they'll give you more if you need it. So I've learned after 20 years of working with almost 1,000 women entrepreneurs, a very simple process that everybody will probably know or think they know best about your business and how to run it. And based on anything that they've had experience with or watched or whatever. But if you keep your eye on the prize of your focus is on building a scalable, sustainable, and successful business that increases in value, you'll always be focused on that horizon. And you back it up with a defensible plan so that all the members of your team, including your advisors and investors, understand what that plan is. And the most important part is that they're aligned with you. Because if they're not aligned with you, and we don't have enough time here, I could share hundreds and hundreds of stories about the shock that happens when you realize that you're going forward with your vision and your mission to accomplish what you think is the desired goal, and you feel that people are not there with you. The most important part of it is to make sure you're very clear, communicating your plan, and the people around you are supporting that plan. You plot those milestones, you show everybody and be clear about when your increase in value is going to happen, and show very clearly what you assume and anticipate that you're going to achieve in your next phase of growth. People always talk about 5 years from now or 10 years from now, I expect to be here. I'm really mostly interested in how you're going to accomplish what you need in a 6-month or an 18-month period of time, so that we know you establish the next frame, the next foundation on which to build on. So I'm going to tell you a quick little story that was given to me fairly recently by an entrepreneur. And basically she said that when she went to talk to investors, they basically said, we'd like to know what your exit strategy is. Now, she was at the very earliest stages of her business, and they were trying to, again, think about when they were going to get their money back and when does she think they will either sell or go public. And ultimately, she looked at them and she said, here's what I have to say about this. The market will dictate the future exit opportunity for this company. I can pontificate about that right now. But for now, here's how I plan to add value. Here's my execution plan. Here's how I will grow this company. Are you aligned with my plan? And at that stage, it really shows so important to everybody around you that you're the one who really understands how to build the company, that you're asking for advice and support from your vendors, of which I include investors, bankers, lawyers, accountants, investors. Those are all vendors who have a stake in the success of your business, as long as you're the one to lead the charge. I hope this is helpful for you, and I'm glad to answer any questions on this process. I could have told you stories about the hundreds of entrepreneurs I've worked with that have learned this and are now understanding the whole process methodology of working with investors and building strong, sustainable, and successful businesses. But let's see if you have any questions.
Amy, thank you so much. That is a great way to get everybody set and on the same page. With investors, we do have a few questions that have come through. The first one is, how do you find the right investor? So you talked about that type being specific to you, your business. How do you find that right investor and know that they're right for you?
You know, they're not like a storefront. You can't go and find them in a storefront. You know, the first thing is really understand what your stage of business is. That's the really important aspect of it. You know, are you an idea? Are you still in the lab? Are you, do you actually have a prototype of a product? Have you gone to your friends and family and colleagues and invested with the people that you know? And then, okay, so now, you know, we had gone through, you know, at the stages of your business, and you know that helps you be relevant to a business. So if you go to incubators, there's actually a whole entire several groups that actually aggregate all of these incubators and accelerator programs, and finding the one that is relevant to you and what you need at that point in time becomes a lot easier. To the National Business Incubator Association mostly works with universities. The Growth Accelerator Association, again, will look at the other accelerators. The most important thing that I always tell everybody is make sure that you are asking those programs what they offer, what their expectations are, and are they relevant to you and your stage of business and the sector in which you operate. And what's wonderful now is there's so many that deal with very specific, narrow verticals. So if you're in ag tech, or you are in biotech for oncology, there is a specific incubator or accelerator program for you. Angel groups, there's the Angel Capital Association. So if you go on their website, you'll see in every state where the angel groups and associations are. And then the Venture Capital Association also includes all of the Venture Capital Association, the organizations within those Venture Capital Associations. So again, all of these places where you can actually find access to the right investors with all kinds of information. And then there's a ton of, whether it's PitchBook or Crunchbase, they'll tell you, if you go in there and use libraries or friends who have access to those databases, it's it's very difficult now not to be able to find sources of relevant information and to get to the right investors. Now, once you do, getting into them is one of my ways I do it is actually going to LinkedIn, and because I have a very large network on LinkedIn, I can actually put a word up there and see who comes up, and then I try to triangulate around, oh, that person knows somebody at that organization that I can use to get in. And entry is always the most important way. Some introduction from somebody who knows helps you get in. And then a lot of organizations have application on their websites, so you can always apply. And whether it's AngelList or Republic or any of these places actually give you an opportunity to put your application up, and hopefully somebody will respond to you.
That's great. I appreciate that. And I'll put a plug for tech transfer offices who can help be connectors too. To your point, it's who you know. So using all the connections you have makes a big difference. I think we have time for one more question. So I'm going to jump up a couple and I'm going to ask this one. This is from Lena Wu, who said, I was recently listening to a panel of VCs speak about their investment strategies. When asked what to do, what do they look for in a startup? Jenny Rook, the founder and managing director of Genoa Ventures, said that she looks at the board, senior management team. She said, in this day and age, if there isn't a woman lead, if there isn't a woman woman in leadership positions, she won't invest. What do you think of this statement? Have you heard similar trends or emphasis on DEI or more balanced leadership team expectation?
My feeling is if you don't have Lena Wu on your board or as an advisor, you're probably in bad situation, because she's the one mostly in demand and the one I look for to see if she's the one validating. It's a validation piece, you know. But I will tell you this, years ago, I got very excited about an entrepreneur who is also in the biotech space and very, very successful now. But she showed me her deck and had a list of advisors on it. And I was so impressed. But people who knew all of those advisors said to me, we're not impressed because they go on everybody's advisory team. And I thought, all right, that's an important thing to understand is, do you know people, again, to check it out, to know who, and the team is absolutely critical, because if you don't have the right team together, you're not going to be able to push forward and to get through your milestones. But if I learned anything from Lena, I learned that it's not just the product, it's who you surround yourself with. Everybody looks for that. To me, I look immediately for the people involved. Do they have a track record? Have they done this before? But the other thing that people look for is, what are your financials? What's your projections? Most investors, especially tech investors, they'll immediately they'll cut through everything and go right to your financial projection slide. And so for me, it's who are the people that are going to execute. For others, it's, what's the business opportunity here financially.
Great. Thank you. I wish we had time to ask more questions. There are some more in the chat. So hopefully we can help people follow up with you. Thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful.
You bet. Thanks so much.